last week and the other times that I visited, it's a joy to be with you all here this morning. Again, I'm Pastor Nathan Klein. I serve as an associate to the bishop here in the Metropolitan Chicago Synod. Just a quick reminder of how our synod's made up. There's about 160-some congregations across Cook County, DuPage County, Lake County, and Kane County. And those counties, our entire synod is broken up into 8 different conferences. You all here in Elmhurst are the Near West Conference. Myself and my colleagues who share my role, we split our duties between being in relationship with various conferences. And so I'm in relationship with the churches that are here in the Near West Conference, and then those that are in the North Conference, which is all of Lake County. Part of also my work is I'm our mobility point person, and that means when a rostered minister activates their RMP, their rostered minister's profile, it means they're looking for a call. They get an email from our office saying, thanks for your interest in Metro Chicago. Please set up some time with Pastor Nathan as a means of introduction. And so I have conversations with a lot of candidates who are looking for calls, though I don't handle all the call processes in our synod. I handle the call processes in the conferences I'm in relationship with, and that's true for my colleagues. But again, I'm just kind of that point person, and I get to read a lot of RMPs and have a lot of those conversations, even if I don't necessarily, those candidates don't end up in the conferences that I'm in relationship with. Before we kind of begin and talk about what interim time looks like, what a call process looks like, I want to first kind of bring you up to speed on some news that you may or may not be aware of. I know there are some church nerds in the room here, but not everyone is keeping track of what's happening in the larger ELCA. This past week, the ELCA met in what's called church-wide assembly. It's the highest governing body of our church. They're the ones who set policy, our social statements, elect officers for our church, and guide us and our vessels of the Holy Spirit. This is made up of pastors and deacons and lay folks from all 65 synods of our church. And the church-wide assembly meets every 3 years. This last week was in Phoenix, and there are several things on the agenda for that week. Adopted a couple of new social statements, including one about government and civic life, of how we relate to one another, how our views might be in relationship to those in public life. So I encourage you to reach out to that. There's study guides that go along with it that are meant for congregations to study and contemplate and figure out what it means in their context. There's some good conversation about what does Constitution look like? What does it mean to be church together, not just as congregation, not just a synod, but us as a church-wide organization. And then there were also 2 major elections that happened. The first of which is the secretary of the ELCA. They're the ones who do a lot of those process things, interface with congregations and synods who are trying to figure out their constitution, do a lot of process things. The legal department falls under their office. And Reverend C.C. Mills, who is a pastor in North Carolina, was elected to that office, and they will be serving a 6-year term. The other major election happening at our church-wide assembly is that of presiding bishop. So each of the 65 synods have a bishop, and then there is a presiding bishop who works at the church-wide office and presides over the entire ELCA. This year, our previous presiding bishop, Bishop Elizabeth Eaton, served 12 years and decided not to run again, and so it was an open field to those who were to be elected. The one who was elected may be a familiar face to you. Our own bishop here, Bishop Yahel Curry, was elected as presiding bishop. Here, give applause. Yes, it is an exciting time and a huge honor. The work that Bishop Curry has done, but more importantly, the work that you all do here as members of the Metropolitan Chicago Synod is seen by the rest of our church as exemplary and one that can be modeled and brought wisdom to the entire church. And so Bishop Curry will be serving a 6-year term that begins on October 1st. That also means after October 1st, he will no longer be bishop of the Metropolitan Chicago Synod. And so that means a few things for you, but I don't think anything major right now. First, our synod constitution says whenever a bishop's office is vacated, The Synod Council, just like your church council is elected, we have a Synod Council that's elected by our Synod Assembly. The Synod Council will be in conversation with the presiding bishop to appoint an interim bishop until the following one can be elected. So there has already been a Synod Council, special Synod Council meeting called for later this month, and there surely already are some plans, as we knew we were going to have a presiding bishop and likely a bishop seat that would be an interim. So we'll receive an interim appointment by the Synod Council, and next year at Synod Assembly we'll be electing a bishop once again, as Bishop Curry was just reelected this last year. And so that is great news to celebrate for the church. Bishop Curry offers wonderful gifts, as you have experienced here in Metro Chicago, and certainly will bring. But it's also very sad because his role is changing and will be less directly involved here in Metro Chicago, though I know his heart will always be here. In terms of like practical things for you all here at Epiphany, I'm not sure that there is much in the immediate of like the transition, the interim process. Staff will continue to serve on Synod staff at least through the interim time. And so I'm not going anywhere quite yet, and I hope I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So just want to assure you that there is a plan in place. You'll have some continuity here, and I think the practical day-to-day effects of like what it means to get an interim, how it means to get candidates and things later on really won't be disrupted. You're still a wonderful congregation. There's still pastors who are going to be interested in serving here, and at the end of the day, those are the practical things that matter. Before we talk again, we're going to talk about interim and call process here. Any questions about that? About church-wide assembly or interim or things like that. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit again about an interim process and a call process here. And I want to just kind of set the table before we start asking questions. I really do want to hear what you all have to say, but I want you to have kind of a base layer of knowledge before we go on into our conversation. So when a pastor leaves, in your constitution it says that the bishop has the power to appoint an interim for the work that happens. And your interim pastor has the same rights and privileges as your called pastor does. And every congregation constitution looks a little bit different, but those are the main outlines. If you want to see the details of that, I invite you to look at your congregation constitution. So again, an interim is a bishop-appointed process, and the role of an interim looks like a variety of things. First, it's just to provide some stability to do those practical day-to-day things that your pastor did last, of being in the office, answering calls, making visits, doing the more administrative and head of staff roles, those sorts of things. Another role of interim is to give some space, to decompress from your last pastor, no matter how wonderful. Just a time to kind of take it back, to take a look, and to take stock, to really discern who are we as a community, and who do we want to be, and what does it look like to move forward with our next rostered minister. And so that's another goal of the interim process, is just to take some stock, to do some discernment, and to think about what is to happen next. There's a really great resource called the Interim Ministry Handbook. Your church council has it, but it's also available on our website, and that really dives into this interim ministry process. And I invite you to take a look at that, because I think it does offer some more details that maybe we won't even have the chance to get into today. So I've been in conversation with Bishop Curry, with the church council here at Epiphany, about who might be a suitable interim. We think we may have identified someone, and there are just some times to get the details worked out of start date, compensation, things like that. And so I can't offer more details other than to say, since we've known that Pastor Ron was going to leave for some time here, we've had some time to do some prep work, and so we hope to have some more concrete information for you soon, but our hope is starting in the fall.
We anticipate being able to approve the appointment of the interim pastor at our next congregational council meeting, which is the last Monday of the month, the 25th. I don't know the number offhand. And as soon as all that's done, just rest assured that we will notify you.
And so that's good news that things are moving forward. I was in conversation with church council not only about this interim process, but especially about these next couple of weeks. And they have done some really diligent work in this transition, setting up pulpit supply, figuring out what it means for pastoral care and things like that. So I just want to recognize the hard work that your church council is doing. And please know that you're in the hands of capable leaders here. And I know they're a reflection of such a vital community. So just wanted to say that again. So in interim, like I said, you're all wondering about timeline, right? That's on your mind. And an interim can look like a few different things. Generally, it takes a month or two to get an interim in place, and then you just need some time to figure out how are you going to interact with one another? The interim needs time to learn people's names, needs time to know the dynamics of this place, and to get a sense of place. And so that can usually take 2 to 3 months. It just depends on the community, depends how fast you want to move, but it just takes some time to get to know one another. The next step in the process, once you've kind of feeling a little bit established, is to start talking about an MSP, a ministry site profile. I mentioned the RMP earlier, the rostered minister profile. That's what rostered ministers fill out. An MSP is sort of the corollary of that, and it's called the ministry site profile. And that's where you talk about who you are, where you've been, where you want to go, and it gives a sense to candidates of who you are. And so after that, kind of get to know you time is really the time that you start figuring out your MSP. This is the primary work of the call committee. So during that time, you will form a call committee and then begin on this MSP work. But the interim, again, is really to help facilitate some of that, to help or put a mirror back up to the congregation, and to help guide that process there. So a ministry site profile, at minimum, is probably a month or two's worth of work. It's not something that you want to hurry through, but it's also something that you want to get everyone's voices included. 4 or 5 people could probably sit down, type it in a matter of an afternoon, but that's only 4 or 5 people's worth of voices. And so part of the interim's work, part of the call committee's work, is really to invite conversation with the congregation, to fill some things out, to post it, receive feedback, host forums. It just sort of depends on what works for your church. Not every congregation does that process the exact same. And so part of that is you knowing yourself back, the interim bringing some of those gifts to the table. And so that will take, again, probably a few months to do that. And then once an MSP is ready, you have a call committee in place, you're ready to enter the call process. An MSP is live. You'll send it to me. I'll review it and maybe offer some feedback. And then once that is live, it means you're looking for a pastor. And that can take an undetermined amount of time. It really depends. And I know that's not a satisfying answer. It depends on what you're looking for and who is out there at the time. As you may be aware, there are fewer pastors than there once were, but there are also fewer full-time calls than there once were. And so the times that there are full-time calls, there's certainly interest, and we're in a metropolitan area where a lot of folks either want to continue to live or to move to. And so there are congregations in our church, and I'm talking about Big C Church in the LCA, that go months and years with a full-time call and receive a couple of candidates here and there that don't work out. I don't anticipate that being the case here. Again, we are fortunate in Metro Chicago where we still are able to provide not only candidates in a reasonable amount of time, but oftentimes multiple candidates at a time. Our aim is to have 3 candidates per slate of interviews for those for the call committee to discern. They can have 1, 2, 3 conversations, and if they think they found the right person, they move to church council, talk about practical details, then we move to the congregation, do meet and greet and call vote and stuff like that. We don't have to get to that in the details of that right now. It's still a ways down the way, but just kind of want you to know where we're going. And so that can take anywhere from just coordinating call committees' schedules of everyone getting to meet in the same place, getting a candidate here. Interviews probably take a few months as well. Just if you have more than a couple of interviews, you're working with volunteers who aren't working 40 hours a week devoted to just that work there. So it takes some time. All in all, it depends. you're also in the driver's seat. Some communities are moving fast, want to move as quickly as possible. Some communities want to take some time, think about their discernment, take a little bit more time with that. So at minimum, we're talking probably 9 months to a year and a half before you would probably call a pastor. And that, again, depends on a few different things of how quickly you move, what candidates are available, how long it takes to find the right candidate, whether that's in the first slate or your fifth slate, whatever that looks like. But that's a kind of quick overview of what interim process looks like and what call process looks like. Again, there's an interim ministry handbook that I invite you to look at. I'll be glad to talk more about that. And also, once a call committee is formed, that's my chance to come back in to do what's called a call committee orientation with the call committee, but the entire congregation is invited, where we talk about those nitty-gritty details of what does it mean to fill out an MSP, what does the call process look like, what's expected for interviews. And so I don't expect you to remember or know all those details. We'll talk again when that happens along the way here, and that's true. I'll be with you, and so if you have any questions, you don't have to remember all the things I say today. I'm always glad to answer along the way. So I've just talked at you for a while. I'm happy to answer any questions about this or about what you have in general, and I'm going to hand you the meeting because we have some folks joining on live stream so they can hear.
So you mentioned that the bishop's office was notified earlier about Pastor Ron's departure. In thinking about the pool of potential pastors or candidates, who knows that Epiphany is looking for a pastor?
I think at this point, the folks who know that Epiphany is looking for a pastor are those who have mostly heard by word of mouth. As soon as an interim is appointed, we have this working document called the Call Vacancies and Open Calls. It's a Google Doc that we live update, and it lists by conference what congregations are open and moving towards call and where they are in the call process. And it goes anywhere from A to E. A is just meaning we're in self-discernment. B is we're ready to start an MSP. C is you're looking for candidates. D is candidate name submitted. E is you have a call vote scheduled. And so that is the public facing that folks who are looking for a call in Metro Chicago will be able to see. And certainly it will become more and more known, especially as we're moving towards that. So yeah, there is some public visibility, and there's also an ELCA database where you fill out that RMP in your MSP, and part of that MSP comes live in the central database.
Hi. Is it the council or the congregation, or either one, who would approve the interim?
Thank you for the question. So interims are, as I mentioned, bishop appointed, and so it's the bishop's discretion who serves as interim, but really it is the church council's final decision, but really only in the cases where there are kind of significant mismatches in expectations and compensation and things like that. Part of one of my colleagues, whose name is Pastor Carla Thompson-Powell, part of her portfolio is interims, to know the interims that are out there, what their gifts are, when they are available. And so when we offer someone up, we really think this is not only the best fit for Epiphany, but the one who's available kind of timing-wise and logistically. And so again, it's bishop appointed, but church council approved, and unless there are some significant concerns or incompatibilities, that really is a process that sort of moves forward, but the church council works on, and the bishop would also sign the interim agreement. Go back here first.
Is the interim that is appointed, is like that person guaranteed, unless there's incompatibilities or whatever, to stay with us through the whole process?
Great question. So an interim's job is technically over once an MSP is submitted and names are interviews start. That is technically the case. Oftentimes, and we try our very best to make the transition as smooth as possible. So most of the time, interims will will stay until the next pastor is called. And sometimes there'll be a week or two or a month of in-between time between a time an interim ends and the next pastor begins. So our ideal is to get to that point. But as I said, there are other places in interim that, and there's a limited supply of interims. And so sometimes if we kind of think a call is nearby, the candidates are coming along the way, an interim may be moved again at the discretion of the bishop, but our goal is to try to make the transition and the process as painless for everyone. So technically it could be sooner, but really we try to aim until the next pastor is called for an interim to stay. Another question here.
So this kind of piggybacks on that. Is the interim a potential candidate, or is their role just in the transition?
Great question. So interims come in a couple of different flavors. There are those who have, actually let me answer your question first. If part of the expectation and part of the covenant that is signed by the church council and the interim is that the interim will not become a candidate here. It really kind of muddies the waters. We also really want to have a fair process for our candidates and make sure everyone's on a same playing field, and that sort of puts an advantage to the interim candidate if they were to become a candidate here. And so yes, or excuse me, no, the interim candidates the interims do not become candidates for the call. But more than that, there are many interims who feel called specifically to interim ministry, that they are not interested in settled calls, but they feel like their role in the church is to help and walk with communities that are in transition, to ask those questions, to have an expiration date on their ministry that actually enables some really wonderful work to be done. And so that's really the hope and one of the things that when Bishop Curry talks to interims, when Pastor Carla is thinking about who is most suitable, that's one of the questions we ask is this isn't just a short run around to get your name in, but really is this something you feel called to do and work with communities, specifically in the places that you're at. I'm gonna go back here one more time, then I'll come back to you.
Since Bishop Curry knows us so well, and before he leaves in October, will he be the one that will suggest an interim, or will it be someone who doesn't know us as well?
So we do have a candidate in mind for the interim that has already been identified, church council, and they are just working through some of the more practical details. And so nothing is guaranteed at this point, but we're hopeful, and that was identified by Bishop Curry in our office.
You had mentioned that we will receive 3 names from the Synod, hopefully. Are we allowed to nominate somebody that like if we do a search or an individual finds somebody they really would like, are they allowed to submit that name?
The short answer is yes. The slightly more complicated answer is they need to have a live RMP. They need to be able to say to the church, because we are accountable to one another, we don't want backroom dealings and secret things to just magically pop up, because again, we are church together, and not just here in Metro Chicago, but through the entire ELCA. And so one of our values, not only as a synod, but as the bishops have discussed, candidates will not be put in call processes unless they have a live RMP. And so if someone is curious and you want to lift a name, what I would tell you is, or what I would say to you is, tell them to activate their RMP if it's not live yet, and to contact me. And that's certainly a way that folks who are identified within the congregation can find their ways into interview slates.
Over the years, we've had a lot of great associate pastors working with our main pastor. Is this whole process going to muddy that water, prevent us from doing any associate pastor or joining the temporary pastors?
So that is up to the discernment of this congregation. There are two, you would fill out two separate MSPs, though there are lots of things that are together, but there are some role-specific parts of that MSP. And so if you discern as a congregation that you are looking to call an associate pastor, a lot of times those don't happen at the same time, though they sometimes do. It would be a matter of filling out another MSP for us, on that Google Doc where all those calls are available, we'd be listed at both of those. So, it's up to the discernment of this congregation is, what do you want? Where do you feel called? And actually, that's one of the things that often gets discussed during an interim is what does staffing look like? Especially when it comes to rostered ministers, but not exclusively rostered ministers. So it's a possibility that's open, but really that question lies within the congregation. Which part is that uncommon? To do it at the same time, I would say that is more uncommon. I don't think it's unheard of, but generally, especially when a senior pastor opening is open, that congregations will focus on that because it kind of sets the tone, and they'll have some say in what staffing looks like and what a potential match would look like. There's a little water here. Any other questions or concerns about interim, about what life looks like in the Synod, about what life looks like here at Epiphany? And again, we will meet again once a call committee is formed to do that call committee orientation. Again, that's really focused on the call committee, but it is open to the entire congregation because the process itself, many of which pieces have to be confidential and held in confidence within the call committee along the way, but the actual step-by-step, that's a process that should be known to everyone, that everyone participates in and can have a voice in, and so the call committee is not working in secret, the process, but sometimes, again, personal details, who's available in interviews and things like that, those are held in confidence.
Who will choose the people that are on the call committee? When we were looking for an associate, Pastor Ron approached people to be on the call committee, but since we don't have a pastor, who gets the call committee?
So this is a congregation-dependent thing. Sometimes your constitution lays out how a call committee is appointed, and sometimes that's by the church council, sometimes that's by the congregation. Jill, do you know what your constitution says?
Executive committee had discussions with Pastor Ron before he left, who kind of provided us some guidelines. The Constitution says it will be a 6-member call committee and has given some guidance on sort of the skills of a call committee person, which is really important, and the lens that they bring to the table so that we know that we are well representing the entirety of the congregation when we're making decisions. So we are beginning we're at the very beginning steps, the executive committee, of starting to think about what a good, strong call committee would look like.
I think there was another question back here. Yeah.
That was actually my question, but then secondary to that is, as you start that process, Jill, when do we expect to form that committee? Where does that fit in the timeline as the interim?
Yeah, great question. So that's after kind of the get to know you time. So once an interim is appointed, again, you need probably a couple of months, 2 to 3 months, just to get to know you, and then so they can have a sense of where they are. And I should say, an interim is not expected to take place in the call committee's work. That they are not interviewing candidates. They can sometimes provide some feedback for the MSP. Again, that's the call committee's work, but they can read the MSP, they can help facilitate some of those maybe forums or discussions, but it is the work of the call committee to fill out the MSP and to do the interviews and things like that. So once an MSP is submitted, it is totally hands-off is the expectation, and our interims know that it is really, because our understanding of call as a Lutheran body is that calls come from the people. Pastors and bishops, we have some power and we have some responsibilities, but power always resides in the congregation because we understand that's how the Holy Spirit works in this collected body here. And so you are the ones who call your next pastor as well. Your church council, your bishop, you don't get appointed. You as a body get to call your next pastor, and that's why you have meet and greet. You have your call committee to do some of the day-to-day and the hard work, but ultimately it's you that decides who was called your next pastor.
Thank you, Pastor Nathan. I just want to add to that there is some practical concerns about what is happening during the life of the church. So we'll want to put a call committee together, but then, they're not going to be actively interviewing during Christmas, or, there's certain times when so what might seem like a pause might actually be just creating a space to be more effective and efficient in the search, so.
And that's a great point as to timelines as well. If you activate your MSP 2 weeks before Easter, I'm not going to have candidates for you in 2 weeks because you all are worried about other things. Potential pastors are worried about other things. And so when I talk to my colleagues who are just about the job in general, one thing that I've observed is my busy seasons are often kind of opposite of what they were in when I was serving a congregation. No one's emailing me during Holy Week. No one's emailing me during Christmas. But as soon as January 1st rolled around, a whole flood of things came to my inbox, and call committees were ready to start, and candidates were submitting RMPs, and so yeah, that is one of those timing things. Or getting a call committee, 6 people of a call committee together in August is a near impossible thing. And so, yeah, if you submit your MSP or you have a candidate ready, you can certainly interview in August, but it might be one of those things that just is a little more challenging, needs to wait. So that's why timeline is hard to speak of, because again, these are volunteers who are offering their time, you all have complex and busy lives, and I know you are devoted and interested and committed to your community, but some of those practical things stretch out a timeline in a longer way that they might, say, in a corporate world where people are getting paid to do this work. Any other questions? Or yeah, please.
Just a comment, if there aren't any other questions, that doesn't mean you won't think of one later today or tomorrow or sometime during the week. So I really do want to encourage you to reach out to me with any questions. I've got, Pastor Nathan in my phone now. We are, phone buddies. I am happy to reach out and get some questions answered. We want to really stay ahead of it and make everyone feel comfortable that we're addressing things and we are really listening. So thank you for coming today. It means a lot to me, to council, so that we know, the kinds of things that you think about, so we can address those.
I've never asked a question, but who is going to be in between until we get the interim?
That is an important question. Who's going to show up next Sunday, right? So I will leave the Saturday question to Jill, but your church council has been working to arrange pulpit supply, which is just Saturday or Sunday only work until that interim begins. And is there pulpit supply on Saturdays?
Yeah, so first of all, shout out to Larry Magnuson back there, because he, as our vice president, volunteered to lead the search for the supply pastors. And during this time of year in August when people are traveling, that is no easy task. So he was able to secure supply pastors for both Saturday and Sunday services until our interim begins, which we will anticipate will be, into the fall. We were also able to secure emergency pastors. So remember, supply pastors will just come in and preach, but we know that we need to have a pastor on call, in the unfortunate event that someone needs pastoral care or to continue pastoral care that is going on. We were lucky enough, Pastor Ron helped us secure Pastor Dr. Leland Albright. He is a retired pediatric neurosurgeon and a Lutheran pastor, and he's amazing. He is already ready to roll. He did have a couple little previous vacations planned, and so we have secured 2 other pastors. Joan and us were all aware of what's happening. Should the need arise, Joan in the office will be able to contact the emergency pastor should it be during office hours. If it's outside of office hours, contact me, and I will arrange for I have the contacts with the emergency pastors in order to respond to the concerns. So we are very lucky. We are in a good place. We are as secure and covered as we can be during this time of change.
Just again, coming from the congregation, finding pulpit supply during the month of August is a near impossible task. So Larry, you did wonderful work and good job. And again, more reason that you all should feel comfortable knowing that you are in capable hands, not just of your leadership here, but of one another, because you care about this community, and I know that you want to see what's best to come. And Pastor Leland is lovely and amazing. As Jill said, Pastor Leland was a pediatric neurosurgeon. I was in a couple of seminary classes with him. He was someone who always wanted to be a pastor, but instead chose to slack off and be a pediatric neurosurgeon instead. But in retirement went back to seminary to become a pastor, and so I got to interact with him a few times during seminary and just can't say enough wonderful things. So I'm glad that that'll be with you a few times throughout this interim. Any other questions? Well, again, it is an honor and joy to be with you, not just today, but through whatever next is to come. Again, it's not your job to remember all the things, but I'm here to walk with you and to answer those questions. And a lot of times I'll tell Jill or tell the call committee, do X and then call me. And then I will tell you do Y and then call me. And so I try to make it as manageable as possible. But again, if you do have questions or concerns, you can talk to Jill, who has my contact, and always glad to address them along the way here. So appreciate your time this morning and look forward to being with you over what's to come.